Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're tackling an absolute giant of 20th century philosophy, Edmund Husserl. Specifically, we are diving into his notoriously dense, and I mean literally textbook-defining dense, masterwork, Ideas I. At the turn of a century, European thought was in a bit of a crisis. It was totally dominated by naturalism. That's the idea that absolutely everything, even human consciousness, could be boiled down to blind biological and physical facts. Well, Husserl saw this as deeply self-defeating. He realized, hey, if logic and math are just random biological byproducts, then the very sciences relying on them completely lose their absolute validity, right? So his solution was a brand new foundational science of experience called phenomenology. And as we're going to see, it totally flips our understanding of reality on its head. Okay, so let's just dive right into this with a question that might sound a little out there at first, but is actually the ultimate gateway into phenomenology. What if you stop assuming the universe exists independently of your mind? Seriously, what if you just pause that core belief, just for a second? It's a jarring thought for sure, but it is absolutely the key to unlocking the true architecture of how we experience anything.
All right, let's kick things off with Section 1, Fact, Essence, and Science.
Now, we're all pretty familiar with empirical sciences, right? Things like physics and biology. But Husserl points out this really stark contrast. Those sciences study contingent facts, meaning they study things that happen to be a certain way but could easily be different. Like a tree is green, but it could just as easily be painted white. Husserl's pure phenomenology, though, is what he calls an eidetic science. It studies absolute invariant essences. He believed that to rescue objective truth from just being reduced to a biological accident, we have to look at the unchanging structures of consciousness itself. To actually grasp these underlying essences, Husserl uses this brilliant mental exercise. He calls it the method of free imaginative variation. Basically, you take an object, say a box. Then, just in your imagination, you mentally vary its properties. You change its color from red to blue, you change the material from wood to glass, you shrink it, you make it huge. As you do all of this, you observe what absolutely cannot be altered without destroying the box's identity as a physical thing. That invariant core, in this case, its three-dimensional spatial extension, is its essence. You're literally stripping away the changeable traits in your mind to uncover its unbreakable core.
Moving on to Section 2, we have to confront the biggest obstacle to understanding our own minds, the natural attitude. So the crucial takeaway here is this thing called the general thesis. It's the silent background noise of our entire lives and actually of all empirical science. It's that dogmatic, totally pre-reflective certainty that the physical world is just out there completely on its own. Think about looking at a mountain. You just assume that mountain was there long before you showed up, and it's going to be there long after you turn away. Husserl says we take this completely for granted. It's like the default setting of the human brain. But if we want to study consciousness scientifically, we actually have to switch that setting off.
And that brings us to Section 3, bracketing the external world.
To turn that default setting off, Husserl introduces a concept called the Epoché. It's an ancient Greek term for suspending judgment. Now, I want to be super clear about what this is not. It does not mean you're doubting the world exists, like René Descartes did when he was worrying about an evil demon tricking him. You aren't denying reality. Instead, you're just methodologically suspending your belief in it. You are neutralizing your dogmatic certainty, basically putting the physical universe inside mental parentheses. You're placing the whole question of the world's independent existence completely out of play.
But wait a second, right? If you bracket away the entire physical universe, and even bracket your own biological body, what's left? Are you just left with a dark, empty void? Not at all. Husserl argues that what remains is the transcendental residuum. You are left with the absolute, undeniable reality of your own pure perceiving mind, or what he calls the transcendental ego. Think about it. You can bracket the physical world, sure, but you absolutely cannot bracket the consciousness that's actively doing the bracketing. Even if everything you're seeing right now is a hallucination, the act of seeing is 100% real. And this reveals a really brilliant asymmetry of being. Physical objects in the world, transcendent beings, are always given to us in what Husserl calls adumbrations, which is just a fancy word for partial profiles. If you look at a physical cube, you never see the whole cube at once, right? You see the front, maybe the top. Because of this, your perception is fallible. I mean, it could just be a clever cardboard cutout. But your internal conscious acts, immanent beings, like feeling joy or thinking of a triangle, those don't have front sides or back sides. They are given to you directly, fully, and absolutely. The certainty of your own conscious experience is indubitable.
Let's dive right into Section 4, the anatomy of experience, where we dissect how this all actually works. The absolute cardinal rule of pure consciousness here is intentionality. In phenomenology, your mind is never just some passive, empty container sitting around waiting to be filled up with thoughts. No, it is always actively pointing at something. Every single conscious act is consciousness of something. Whether you're loving a person, remembering yesterday, or perceiving a tree, your mind is always actively directing itself toward an object. So, let's break this intentional act down into its 3 essential layers, starting with the absolute base, the Heil. Heil is a Greek word for matter. And this is just the raw, unformed, chaotic sensory data hitting your nervous system before your mind has any chance to process or interpret it. On its own, the Heil has 0 meaning. Like a meaningless patch of red color hitting your retina isn't an apple yet, it's just raw sensory static. Next up is the active hero of our story, the Noesis. This is your mind's active, form-giving, intellectual power. The Noesis grabs that raw, chaotic Heil, that patch of red, and animates it. It bestows meaning onto that sensory data, shaping it into a structured, coherent experience. It's a literal action of perceiving, judging, or valuing. So, where does this lead? To the 3rd layer, the Noa. The Noa is the final outcome of this entire process. It's the object as intended. And this is crucial. It is not the physical apple in the outside world. It is the meaning of the apple as it exists perfectly in your mind during that conscious act. It holds the sense of the object and the core identity tying all its properties together. And honestly, here's the magic of phenomenology. Even if that physical apple turns out to be a total illusion, the noem of the apple remains completely present and structurally real within your pure consciousness. All right, moving into section 5, constituting meaning and reality. Let's rebuild the world. Now, a huge question naturally comes up here. How do we actually know if what we're thinking is true? Husserl relies on a concept called evidence. And no, this isn't like looking for clues at a crime scene. In phenomenology, evidence is that aha moment of intuitive fulfillment. Imagine you're sitting at work and you think about your car parked in your driveway. That thought is an empty intention. The car isn't physically there in the office with you. But later, when you walk home and actually look at your driveway, that empty intention is perfectly fulfilled by a direct sensory intuition. The object gives itself to you directly. And for Husserl, that intuitive fulfillment is exactly what truth is. Which brings us to a highly misunderstood concept, transcendental idealism. Critics love to accuse Husserl of saying the mind just magics the world out of thin air. But to constitute doesn't mean to create from nothing. As Husserl notes, it means to bring to manifestation as meaningful. The world doesn't just exist as some absolute raw fact independent of us. The reality you experience is a continuous, active collaboration. Your transcendental ego is actively constituting the world by making it intelligible. Finally, let's look at the immense legacy of Ideas I. When Ideas I was published back in 1913, it literally sent shockwaves through modern philosophy. At first, it actually upset a lot of Husserl's realist students who thought he was just retreating back into idealism. But look what happened next. By 1927, his own assistant, Martin Heidegger, took this framework of intentionality and used it to publish Being in Time. Now, Heidegger did reject the Epoché, preferring to focus on our bodily historical existence instead. But then, in the 1930s and 40s, French philosophers like Jean-Paul Sartre and Maurice Merleau-Ponty took these ideas and ran with them. Sartre used intentionality to describe consciousness as nothingness, while Merleau-Ponty adapted it to focus entirely on the lived, physical body. Modern existentialism literally owes its mechanics to Husserl's phenomenology. So, here's where we land. By suspending our dogmatic assumptions, Husserl showed us that the physical world isn't just a collection of brute, ready-made facts passively sitting there waiting to be observed. I want to leave you with this final thought to carry with you. If your reality is actually a continuously active creation of meaning, actively constituted by the very structure of your own mind, what happens when you consciously choose to change the narrative? Thank you so much for exploring the depths of pure consciousness with me in this explainer.
Please like and subscribe.